Joining us right now is someone who he manned the dugout over at Minute Maid Park for 4 seasons, including the Astros' first trip to the World Series in 2005. Phil Garner joining us right now on Sports Radio 610. Phil, it's great to have you on the show. What was your reaction yesterday when you heard the news, like the rest of us did, about AJ and Jeff?
Well, I kind of expected that there were some suspensions coming and fines, but I was a little surprised by the firing. So disappointed by that and sad to hear it.
You know, and I've tried to put myself in AJ Hinch's position where your players are going to do what they're going to do, and it's baseball where people are pushing the envelope in some regards. I guess have you tried to put yourself in his position and wondered how you might have handled it?
Well, I think there's a lot of talk going on, and people say they do certain things, but when you're involved in it closely, when you have the dynamics of your clubhouse that you have to be very careful with, I think people would do things that they otherwise might not do. And I think in this case, as AJ has said, he regrets that he didn't do enough, although at what he told me at one time, he took a bat to the monitor, and that should have been sufficient for the players to stop it, but they didn't. And so I think that certainly looking back on it, AJ probably would have been more forceful, but beating up a monitor is a pretty forceful thing to do.
Well, hey, as a manager or as a coach, sometimes you think you're sending a clear message, and sometimes the clearest message isn't received. And I wonder, you mentioned that relationship with the players. The fact that Carlos Beltran is a guy that had been brought onto the team to provide some veteran leadership, when your veteran leader is the guy doing it, does it become that much more tricky of a scenario for the manager?
I think in this case it was very tricky. And now let me tell you, I'm speaking from just my own experience. I have no inside information here from AJ or anybody else at the Astros. I really think that Beltran's getting a free ride here, and the question I asked myself was, why does this all start in the first place? Because if we go back, the Astros were a great team. I mean, it was nobody wouldn't think there had to be a reason for if Cora came up with this idea and what instigated. And Beltran apparently was not playing well, as I recall. Beltran wasn't swinging the bat that well, and maybe all this instigated because of that. But, I asked myself the question, why would it start? Then once it starts and you find out about it, you want to stop it. But it may mean that Beltran, if he can't function without it, you got to bench him. So, yes, there's a lot of dynamics going on here.
Phil Garner joining us on Sports Radio 610. Phil, just staying with that for a second, the commissioner's report that came out basically outlined the Astros having a scheme in place at the beginning of 2017 where it required a runner on second base to convey the signs. Beltran, according to the report, was the one who essentially was behind the streamlining of the whole thing, which led to them having this scheme where they bang on a garbage can standing next to that monitor down in that hallway leading back to the clubhouse. I guess just going back to when this scheme was first revealed, when Mike Fiers kind of blew the whistle on the Astros, what was your reaction to the actual scheme itself, the banging of a garbage can?
Well, it didn't make sense to me. I mean, I've been in this situation. Look, stealing signs have been going on in baseball for a long time, and let me digress a little bit. When I played for the Astros, Ray Knight was a player. You might remember him. And Ray Knight was absolutely the best I'd ever been around in baseball at stealing the signs. Now, he'd get to second base, and by the third pitch, he had the sequence between pitcher and catcher. But on the Astros at the time, nobody wanted the signs, including myself. When I learned after trying to take them from Ray a couple times that if I knew a fastball was coming, if it was 5 feet outside, I swung at it. I knew it was coming. So, number one, I don't think that it was as pervasive as you might think. I don't believe everybody on the team might have been using the system. That's the first thing. The second thing is, it didn't make sense to me when I originally heard about it because in my day there was a time lag from the TV feeds, and we didn't have a camera in house that had a real time down. But even at that, there's only a few seconds between time a pitcher gets a sign and he delivers the ball. And most players don't like any distractions. As a matter of fact, you'll learn that the definition of concentration is you learn to tune everything out. So you tend not to hear what's going on. It's kind of amazing how when you're in those key situations, you don't hear anything until after the action's over, and then all of a sudden you hear the crowd. It's like it fades out and comes back in. So I am surprised that several players were able to do it, and at first I didn't think it was going to help, to be honest with you.
I'm glad you brought that up because maybe it did work for one or two, especially, and I always wondered if somebody's slumping, then maybe that's the thing where you say, all right, nothing else is working, I'm going to try this. But if I'm one of those players, I'm going to go with the defense that I tried it, but I didn't inhale. That was sure. I might have done it just to fit in, but I didn't inhale. What's the dumbest thing you ever saw somebody try cheating that definitely didn't work?
Oh, I wish I'd had some time to think about this. One of the things. Let me tell you a quick story. When I took over managing back with the Milwaukee Brewers. In spring training, we were playing against the Kansas City Royals, and I've got a young pitcher named Ricky Bones, and the first batter of the game, and I don't remember who he was. The third pitch, he hits him. He tried to hit him with the first two pitches and missed him. They hit him with the third pitch, and all of a sudden there's a brouhaha. Well, I didn't know what was going on, but apparently this guy was peeking at the catcher the previous year, didn't know about it, and so they had schemed to hit this guy. They were gonna nail him because that's pretty dumb, because if you're gonna look at trying to catch a sign, peeking back is one of the things that everybody can see that you're doing. That was pretty stupid.
Phil Garner joining us on Sports Radio 610. So, Phil, Mike Fiers was the one who initially blew the whistle to the Athletic on this whole thing. Mike Fiers pitches for the Oakland A's. The Oakland A's play the Astros 19 times each season. Inevitably, Mike Fiers is going to face the Astros this year. Obviously, he's not going to step into the batter's box against the Astros, so maybe it's a moot point because of the designated hitter. But how do you think Mike Fiers is being viewed in this whole thing by the Astros? If you were with the Astros now, how are you looking at Mike Fiers, and do you think Mike Fiers ends up getting any sort of unwritten rule retribution in this whole thing?
No, I don't. That's kind of going out the window in baseball. The fact that you retaliate, the unwritten rules kind of thing, that's been lost in the culture. I think that he'd be viewed as a rat. Okay, if it was a big deal for you, why didn't you bring it up while you were the Astros? Why didn't you step up and stop it? You're going to wait until you go another team. You're going to enjoy the fruits of if there's any success being had by cheating, you're enjoying that while you're the Astros. Then when you go away, I don't like that anymore. So to me, that's not a very good standard. And I think most baseball players will look at it that way. I like the old days. You're talking about retribution. If you're stealing signs, you put 3 sliders down and you throw 2 sliders, and then the third one is supposed to be a slider, and you throw a fastball at his head. And then when he gets off the ground, you say, you better not be stealing any more signs. That solves it. That stops it right then. And when somebody rats, you nail them, and that stops it right then too. Well, that doesn't happen anymore.
You know what? I think we could mix both worlds, and let's have the punishment instead of a suspension be that they have to, both Luno and Hinch have to stand up there and take high heat from Roger Clemens.
I'm going with that one. I like that one myself. It's overdone with, and you don't have the problem anymore.
That's it. That's how you get the nickname Scrap Iron right there. Phil Garner joining us on Sports Radio 610. Last one before we let you go, Phil. It looks like, by all accounts, Joe Espada is going to be taking over for A.J. Hinch, at least for the upcoming season. What kind of opportunity is he stepping into here? I guess is what would be a first-time manager with a roster that, hey, look, even with all this punishment, this is still going to be a pretty good baseball team.
Well, I think we certainly have some really good players. First off, let me say I'm an Astros fan. I'm an Altuve fan, and I'm hoping for the best. I'm concerned about the pitching. Now, it's a golden opportunity for a young guy to be able to manage. One thing may be that the expectations aren't necessarily so high, so that's pretty good. I think had this not come out, there's really high expectations on the Astros. So I think this is an opportunity for him to kind of do some things that he wants to without being in a lot of heat. But he's going to have to pull this team together. They got a lot of questions to answer.
Yeah, no question about that. Phil Garner, former Astros manager, joining us here on Sports Radio 610. Phil, we really appreciate the insight and the time. That was fun. Hope to catch up with you again as the season draws closer.
Okay, you bet.
All right, there it is. Phil Garner joining us on the show.